I discovered my parents had sold my childhood bed on Facebook Marketplace for $50 while I was working 16-hour days to pay for their medical bills. What I found hidden in that bed would change everything, and 3 years later, I would write them a check for their dream retirement home, not as their grateful daughter, but as their landlord. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and for 28 years, I believed my parents were the most selfless people who had ever lived. They had immigrated from Colombia when I was 3 years old, carrying nothing but determination and an unwavering commitment to giving their only daughter every opportunity they had never possessed. The narrative of their sacrifice had shaped every major decision I had made throughout my adult life, creating a foundation of gratitude so deep that questioning their motives felt not just ungrateful, but morally wrong. The small ranch house on Maple Street in suburban Phoenix had been our family's sanctuary for 25 years. My father, Roberto, had worked double shifts at the automotive plant, while my mother, Carmen, cleaned office buildings during the night hours when most people slept. They had saved every possible penny to purchase that house, viewing homeownership as the ultimate symbol of their successful integration into American society. The mortgage payments had stretched their budget beyond comfort, but they had never complained, never suggested that their sacrifices were anything other than joyful investments in our family's future. My childhood bedroom occupied the corner of the house that received morning sunlight, a detail my mother had specifically requested when they were searching for homes. She had insisted that her daughter should wake each day surrounded by warmth and brightness, a symbolic gesture that represented their hopes for my future prospects. The room remained largely unchanged for my adolescent years, preserved like a shrine to the dreams they had nurtured for my success and happiness. The centerpiece of that room was an antique wooden bed frame that my parents had purchased from a second-hand furniture store during my elementary school years. The bed had required significant restoration work, and I could still remember my father spending weekend afternoons sanding the weathered wood and applying fresh stain with the patience and attention to detail that characterized his approach to everything valuable in our home. My mother had sewn custom bedding that complemented the restored wood grain, creating a sleeping space that felt both elegant and deeply personal. That bed had witnessed every significant moment of my development, from childhood through young adulthood. I had completed homework assignments while lying across its comfortable surface, hosted sleepovers with friends who marveled at its craftsmanship, and spent countless hours reading novels that transported me to worlds beyond our modest neighborhood. During high school, the bed had provided comfort during the stress of college applications and the anxiety of waiting for acceptance letters. Throughout my college years, returning home meant returning to that bed, which represented stability and belonging in ways that dormitory furniture never could. The bed held particular significance because it represented one of the few purchases my parents had made that transcended pure necessity. Most of their spending decisions were guided by practical considerations and cost-effectiveness, but the bed had been chosen with attention to beauty and craftsmanship that reflected their deeper aspirations for our family's life. My father had explained that a person spends approximately 1/3 of their life sleeping, and therefore deserved furniture that honored the importance of rest and dreams. During my college years at Arizona State University, I had studied business administration with a focus on nonprofit management, driven by a desire to create positive impact while building financial security for my family. The choice had been influenced by my parents' example of service and sacrifice, but also by practical recognition that nonprofit work could provide steady employment and meaningful purpose. My parents had supported this decision enthusiastically, viewing education as the pathway to opportunities that had been unavailable to them. Upon graduation, I had secured a position with Phoenix Community Development Corporation, a nonprofit organization focused on affordable housing initiatives and financial literacy programs for immigrant families. The work aligned perfectly with my values and background, allowing me to utilize my business education while serving communities that shared experiences similar to my own family's journey. The salary was modest but adequate, and the organization offered excellent benefits that provided security for both myself and my aging parents. My personal life had developed along similarly conventional lines. I had been dating Michael Chen, a software engineer whom I had met through mutual friends, for approximately 2 years. Michael possessed the qualities that my parents appreciated in potential partners: stability, ambition, professional credentials, and genuine affection for family relationships. He treated my parents with respect and courtesy, participated in family gatherings without complaint, and demonstrated the kind of reliable character that suggested he would be a dependable husband and father. The relationship had progressed steadily toward what everyone assumed would be marriage and family formation. Michael had begun making subtle references to future plans that included both of us, and my parents had started asking gentle questions about wedding timelines and grandchildren possibilities. The progression felt natural and appropriate, representing the successful culmination of their investment in my education and development. However, during the spring of 2023, our family's comfortable stability was shattered by a series of medical crises that revealed the fragility of our carefully constructed security. My father suffered a severe heart attack while at work, requiring emergency surgery and extended hospitalization. The medical procedures were successful, but the recovery process was lengthy and complicated, requiring several months of rehabilitation and ongoing medication management that created significant financial strain. Approximately 6 weeks after my father's heart attack, my mother was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer during a routine mammography screening. The diagnosis required immediate treatment, including surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation therapy that would extend over several months. The combination of her treatment schedule and my father's ongoing recovery meant that both parents were unable to work, eliminating the household income that had previously covered their living expenses and medical insurance co-payments. The financial pressure created by these simultaneous medical crises was unprecedented in our family's experience. Despite having health insurance through my father's employment, the co-payments, deductibles, and uncovered expenses accumulated rapidly, creating debt obligations that threatened their ability to maintain mortgage payments and basic living expenses. The situation was particularly challenging because their insurance coverage was tied to my father's employment, which was uncertain given his extended medical leave. As their only child and the family member with steady income and the strongest financial position, I felt both obligated and determined to provide whatever support was necessary to ensure their medical care and financial stability. The decision to help was immediate and automatic, reflecting the values they had instilled in me about family loyalty and mutual support during times of crisis. I could not imagine allowing my parents to struggle with medical bills and financial insecurity after everything they had sacrificed to provide for my opportunities and education. I immediately began transferring portions of my salary to cover their mortgage payments, utility bills, and medical expenses that exceeded their insurance coverage. The amounts required were substantial, representing approximately 60% of my monthly income after my own basic living expenses. To generate additional resources, I took on freelance consulting work during evenings and weekends, providing grant writing and program development services for smaller nonprofit organizations that could not afford full-time staff with those specialized skills. The consulting work required significant time and energy beyond my regular employment obligations, but it generated additional income that allowed me to maintain more comprehensive support for my parents while covering my own living expenses. I was working approximately 16 hours per day between my primary job and consulting projects, a schedule that was exhausting but felt necessary given the circumstances our family faced. Michael had been supportive and understanding during the initial months of the crisis, recognizing that family obligations required temporary adjustments to our personal plans and time together. However, as the situation extended beyond what anyone had anticipated, the strain began affecting our relationship in ways that became increasingly difficult to manage. Our conversations frequently focused on my parents, medical updates, and financial needs rather than our own relationship development, and our time together was often interrupted by phone calls or urgent matters related to their care. The physical and emotional exhaustion created by maintaining such an intensive work schedule while managing family crisis responsibilities left me with limited energy for nurturing personal relationships or pursuing activities that provided relaxation and enjoyment. I was functioning in crisis management mode, focused entirely on meeting immediate obligations without adequate attention to longer-term sustainability or personal well-being. During this period, my childhood bedroom remained exactly as it had been throughout my adult years. preserved as a symbol of stability and continuity during a time when everything else felt uncertain and overwhelming. When I visited my parents' house to check on their progress or handle administrative tasks related to their care, I would sometimes sit on that familiar bed and experience a few moments of peace and comfort that reminded me of simpler times when family challenges seemed more manageable. The bed represented not just personal history, but also the tangible evidence of my parents' love and investment in my happiness and security. The care my father had taken in restoring its original beauty, the attention my mother had devoted to creating beautiful bedding, and the priority they had given to my comfort despite their own financial constraints, reflected the depth of their commitment to my well-being throughout my childhood and adolescence. As the medical crises extended into their 6th month, I began to feel the cumulative effects of sustained stress and overwork. The consulting projects that had initially felt manageable became increasingly difficult to complete at the level of quality I demanded of my work. My performance at my primary job began to show signs of strain, despite my efforts to maintain professional standards while managing family responsibilities. The financial pressure was constant, and I had depleted most of my personal savings to cover expenses that seemed to multiply faster than my ability to address them. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The situation required every available resource and all of my mental and physical energy, leaving no capacity for questioning or analyzing the broader patterns of our family relationships. I was operating in survival mode, focused entirely on meeting immediate needs without time or space for reflection about longer-term implications or alternative approaches to the challenges we faced together. My parents expressed gratitude for my support, but their appreciation was often mixed with guilt about the burden their medical expenses had created for my personal finances and professional goals. They would apologize for requiring help and promise to repay my assistance once their health and employment situation stabilized. These conversations were painful for all of us, highlighting the role reversal that had occurred as I became the primary financial support for parents who had always been self-sufficient and proud of their independence. The transformation from being their supported daughter to becoming their financial caregiver represented a fundamental shift in family dynamics that none of us had anticipated or prepared for adequately. The change was necessary and appropriate given the circumstances, but it also created emotional complexity that was difficult to process while managing the practical demands of the situation. During the early autumn months of 2023, as we approached the one-year anniversary of the initial medical crises, I began to hope that the most difficult period might be ending. My father's recovery had progressed to the point where he was considering returning to work on a limited basis, and my mother's cancer treatment had concluded successfully with positive prognosis for long-term recovery. The medical expenses were stabilizing at manageable levels, and there were signs that our family might be able to return to some version of normal life in the foreseeable future. It was during this period of cautious optimism that I would discover information that would fundamentally alter my understanding of our family relationships and force me to question everything I had believed about my parents' character and motivations. The discovery would reveal that the narrative of sacrifice and selfless devotion that had shaped my entire worldview was more complicated than I had ever imagined, and that some of the financial struggles I had worked so desperately to address might have been unnecessarily severe due to decisions my parents had made without my knowledge. The revelation would challenge every assumption I had made about family loyalty, financial responsibility, and the difference between genuine need and manufactured crisis. It would force me to confront the possibility that my extraordinary efforts to support my parents might have been based on incomplete information about their actual circumstances and true priorities. Most importantly, it would begin a process of personal transformation that would ultimately change not only how I understood my relationship with my parents, but how I understood my own capabilities, boundaries, and potential for creating the life I actually wanted rather than the life I believed I owed to others. The comfortable certainty of my role as the grateful daughter who owed everything to sacrificing parents was about to be replaced by a much more complex understanding of family relationships, personal responsibility, and the difference between love and manipulation. The journey ahead would be painful but ultimately liberating, leading me to discoveries about my own strength and worth, that would surprise everyone who thought they knew exactly who Elena Rodriguez was and what she was capable of achieving. The October morning that changed everything began like countless others during that exhausting period of my life. I had worked until nearly 3 o'clock in the morning completing a grant proposal for one of my consulting clients, finally collapsing into bed with the familiar ache of overextended muscles and the persistent worry that had become my constant companion. The alarm sounded at 6:30, allowing me just enough time to shower, dress, and arrive at the Phoenix Community Development Corporation offices by 8 o'clock, for another day of managing affordable housing programs while simultaneously coordinating my parents' ongoing medical care. My morning routine had become a carefully choreographed sequence of efficiency, designed to maximize productivity, while minimizing the time available for dwelling on the mounting stress that threatened to overwhelm my carefully maintained composure. Coffee brewing while checking emails, reviewing my father's medication schedule while applying makeup, responding to text messages from my mother about insurance claims while selecting appropriate professional attire for the day ahead. The multitasking had become second nature, a survival mechanism that allowed me to maintain some semblance of control over circumstances that often felt completely beyond my influence. The drive to work provided the only 20 minutes of relative quiet in my daily schedule, a brief interval when I could listen to music or simply exist in silence without the constant demands for decision-making and problem-solving that characterized every other aspect of my waking hours. That particular morning, I used the time to call my parents and check on their overnight status, a ritual that had become essential for my peace of mind despite the additional pressure it created on my already compressed schedule. My father answered with his characteristic cheerfulness, the determined optimism that had sustained him through months of medical challenges and financial uncertainty. His recovery continued to progress steadily, and his doctors had recently approved his return to limited work duties within the next few weeks. The prospect of his renewed income represented hope for the first time in nearly a year, suggesting that our family might gradually return to some version of financial stability that would reduce the crushing pressure on my personal resources and professional obligations. My mother's voice carried similar positivity when she joined the conversation from the extension in their kitchen. Her cancer treatment had concluded successfully 3 months earlier, and her most recent medical examinations had confirmed that the therapy had achieved its intended objectives without significant complications or concerning side effects. Her energy levels were returning gradually, and she had begun discussing the possibility of resuming part-time cleaning work once her strength fully recovered, and her doctors provided final clearance for physically demanding activities. The conversation concluded with their familiar expressions of gratitude for my support, and their repeated promises to repay every dollar I had contributed to their medical expenses and living costs over the previous months. These assurances had become routine elements of our daily communications, reflecting their genuine appreciation for my assistance, while also acknowledging the financial sacrifice that my support had required. I consistently dismissed their repayment offers, emphasizing that family members help each other during difficult times without expectation of compensation or formal obligations. The Phoenix Community Development Corporation occupied a converted warehouse in the downtown Arts District, a location that reflected both the organization's commitment to urban renewal and the budget constraints that guided most of our operational decisions. My office was located on the second floor, overlooking a courtyard that served as a community gathering space for the affordable housing residents we served. The view provided daily reminders of the impact our work created in the lives of families who faced challenges similar to those my own parents had experienced during their early years in the United States. The morning hours passed in the familiar rhythm of program administration, client meetings, and coordination with partner organizations that formed the foundation of my professional responsibilities. I was reviewing applications for emergency rental assistance when my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification, an interruption that I initially ignored in favor of completing the urgent review that required my immediate attention. The applications represented families facing eviction or utility disconnection, circumstances that demanded quick response and careful analysis to ensure appropriate resource allocation. However, the Facebook notification persisted with additional alerts, suggesting that someone had tagged me in a post or comment that might require acknowledgement or response. Social media interactions had become increasingly rare in my daily experience, primarily due to time constraints that left little opportunity for casual communication or recreational browsing. Most of my Facebook connections consisted of college classmates, professional colleagues, and extended family members who understood that my reduced online presence reflected practical priorities rather than social disengagement. During my lunch break, I finally opened the Facebook application to address whatever notification had been accumulating throughout the morning hours. The alert directed me to a post in a local buy and sell group that I had joined years earlier but rarely visited, a community marketplace where neighborhood residents offered household items, furniture, and various goods to others, seeking affordable alternatives to retail purchases. The group had proved useful occasionally for finding specific items or disposing of belongings that retained value but no longer served my particular needs. The post that had generated the notification featured a photograph that caused my breath to catch in my throat and my heart to begin racing with a combination of disbelief and growing dread. The image showed my childhood bed, the antique wooden frame that my father had restored with such care and attention during my elementary school years, positioned in what appeared to be someone else's bedroom, with different bedding and decorative elements surrounding it. The caption beneath the photograph read, "Beautiful antique bed frame, solid wood, excellent condition. Selling due to downsizing. $50, cash only, pickup required. Serious inquiries only, please." The post had been published by my mother's Facebook account 3 days earlier, generating several comments from interested buyers and ultimately indicating that the transaction had been completed with a buyer who had collected the bed the previous afternoon. I stared at the screen with complete incomprehension, unable to process the evidence that my parents had sold my childhood bed without mentioning the decision during any of our daily conversations over the past week. The sale had occurred while I was working 16-hour days to cover their mortgage payments and medical expenses, sacrificing my personal savings, professional advancement opportunities, and relationship stability to ensure their financial security during their health crises. The emotional impact of the discovery was immediate and overwhelming, creating a physical sensation of betrayal that manifested as actual nausea and disorientation. The bed represented far more than furniture. It symbolized my childhood, my sense of home, and most importantly, my parents' investment in my comfort and happiness throughout my developmental years. The sale felt like a violation of something sacred, a casual dismissal of memories and emotional significance that had shaped my understanding of family love and commitment. The $50 sale price added insult to the emotional injury, suggesting that my parents had valued the bed so minimally that they had prioritized quick disposal over maximizing financial return. If financial necessity had truly motivated the sale, they could have researched comparable items to establish appropriate pricing, or consulted with me about potential buyers who might appreciate the bed's craftsmanship and emotional significance. The hasty low-price transaction suggested either desperation or complete disregard for the bed's meaning and value. More disturbing than the sale itself was the deliberate concealment of the transaction from me during our daily phone conversations. My parents had discussed numerous minor details about their medical appointments, household maintenance issues, and social interactions with neighbors, but had never mentioned their decision to sell furniture or their need for the modest additional income that the bed sale would provide. The omission felt intentional and deceptive, raising questions about what other decisions they might be making without my knowledge, while I exhausted myself financially supporting what I believed to be their complete financial circumstances. I immediately called my mother, struggling to control the anger and hurt that threatened to overwhelm my ability to communicate rationally about the situation. She answered with her typical warmth and enthusiasm, asking about my morning at work and sharing details about a conversation she had enjoyed with their next-door neighbor about seasonal gardening preparations. Her casual demeanor made the contrast with my emotional turmoil even more jarring, highlighting the disconnect between her apparent normalcy and my devastation over the bed sale. "Mom, I saw your Facebook post about selling my childhood bed," I said, attempting to maintain calm professionalism despite the tremor in my voice that betrayed my emotional state. "I'm confused about why you decided to sell it, and why you didn't mention the sale during our conversations this week." The silence that followed my statement lasted several seconds, long enough for me to hear her breathing change in a way that suggested she was formulating her response carefully, rather than offering spontaneous explanation. When she finally spoke, her tone had shifted from casual friendliness to defensive justification, a change that immediately raised additional concerns about her motivations and honesty regarding the transaction. "Elena, mija, we needed some extra money for groceries and utilities, and the bed was just sitting there taking up space in your old room," she said, her voice carrying a note of irritation that surprised me with its sharpness. "You don't live here anymore, and we thought it would be better to sell it to someone who could actually use it instead of letting it collect dust. Her explanation struck me as both inadequate and disingenuous. I had been transferring substantial amounts of money to cover their mortgage, utilities, and medical expenses for nearly a year, including grocery allowances that should have been more than sufficient for their basic nutritional needs. The suggestion that they required additional funds for groceries implied either that my financial support was inadequate, or that they were spending money in ways they had not disclosed to me during our ongoing discussions about their budget and expenses. "Mom, I've been sending you money for groceries every week, plus covering all your major bills," I replied, feeling my composure beginning to fracture under the weight of confusion and growing suspicion. "If you needed more money, why wouldn't you ask me before selling something that has so much sentimental value? And why didn't you mention it when we talked yesterday and the day before?" Her response revealed a defensiveness that felt entirely inappropriate given the circumstances and my legitimate concerns about communication and decision-making that affected items with significant emotional meaning for me. "Elena, we're adults who can make our own decisions about our own house and our own belongings. We don't need to ask your permission to sell furniture that belongs to us." The conversation continued for several more minutes, but each exchange deepened my sense that something fundamental was wrong with my understanding of our family situation and my parents' true priorities. Her unwillingness to acknowledge the bed's emotional significance, her defensive attitude about concealing the sale, and her suggestion that they needed money for basic necessities despite my substantial financial support, created doubt about other aspects of their circumstances that I had accepted without question. After ending the call, I sat in my office staring at the Facebook post and trying to reconcile the evidence before me with the narrative of grateful, struggling parents that had motivated my exhaustive efforts to support them financially. The bed sale represented more than a single transaction. It suggested a pattern of decision-making that prioritized their immediate preferences over consideration for my feelings, financial sacrifice, and emotional investment in our family relationships. The discovery prompted me to examine other aspects of their recent behavior and communications with increased scrutiny and skepticism. I began to recall instances where their explanations about expenses or medical bills had seemed inconsistent or incomplete, moments when I had chosen to trust their account of circumstances rather than requesting detailed documentation or verification. The pattern of accepting their word without question had been motivated by respect for their dignity and recognition of my role as their supportive daughter, but it might have also enabled deception or manipulation that I had been too trusting to recognize. Over the following days, I found myself reviewing our family's financial arrangements with a level of analytical attention that I had previously reserved for my professional responsibilities. The monthly transfers I made to cover their mortgage payments, utility bills, medical co-payments, and living expenses represented a substantial portion of my income and had required significant lifestyle adjustments and additional consulting work to maintain. The amounts were based on information they had provided about their costs and obligations, but I realized that I had never independently verified those figures or requested documentation to confirm their accuracy. The questions that emerged from this analysis were deeply uncomfortable and challenged my fundamental assumptions about my parents, character, and motivations. Had they been entirely honest about their financial circumstances and actual needs? Were there sources of income or assets that they had not disclosed when seeking my support? Had they been making other spending decisions that contradicted their claims about financial hardship while I sacrificed my personal savings and professional advancement to assist them? Most painfully, I began to wonder whether my parents viewed my financial support as an entitlement that they could accept while maintaining complete autonomy over their other financial decisions, including those that affected items and spaces that held deep emotional significance for me. The bed sale suggested a level of disregard for my feelings and sacrifices that contradicted everything I had believed about our mutual respect and consideration for each other's emotional well-being. The discovery marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in my understanding of family relationships, financial responsibility, and the difference between genuine need and manufactured crisis. For the first time in my adult life, I began to question whether my parents' requests for support were based entirely on legitimate necessity, or whether they might include elements of manipulation or exploitation that I had been too trusting and grateful to recognize. The emotional process of confronting these possibilities was extraordinarily painful, requiring me to examine the foundation of my identity as a devoted daughter whose purpose was defined by service to parents who had sacrificed everything for my opportunities. The alternative narrative that began to emerge suggested a more complex dynamic, where my sacrifices might be enabling dependency or entitlement rather than addressing genuine crisis, and where my financial support might be funding lifestyle choices rather than meeting basic survival needs. As I struggled with these disturbing realizations, I also began to recognize that my response to this discovery would determine not only the future of my relationship with my parents, but also the trajectory of my own life, and the extent to which I would continue accepting limitations on my personal growth and professional advancement in service to others, expectations and demands. The journey ahead would require courage to seek truth, even when that truth challenged everything I had believed about the people I loved most, and wisdom to respond in ways that honored both my legitimate obligations to family and my responsibility to protect my own well-being and future potential. The evidence I had accumulated over the weekend created an undeniable picture of systematic deception that demanded immediate confrontation, regardless of how uncomfortable the conversation might prove for all parties involved. The documentation of concealed assets, undisclosed income sources, and discretionary spending that contradicted their claims of financial hardship represented a betrayal that could not be addressed through continued avoidance or diplomatic conversations about financial transparency. Monday morning arrived with the weight of necessary action pressing against my chest like a physical burden. The comfortable routine of checking on their welfare through daily phone calls had been permanently altered by knowledge that transformed their expressions of gratitude into evidence of manipulation, and their requests for support into exploitation of my family loyalty. The daughter who had never questioned their word was about to become someone who demanded accountability and honest communication regardless of their comfort with such expectations. I arranged to leave work early Monday afternoon, citing a family emergency that required immediate attention. The description was accurate in ways that my supervisor could not understand, representing the crisis of discovering that fundamental assumptions about family relationships had been built upon deliberate deception rather than mutual trust and respect. The drive to their house felt simultaneously too long and too short, providing time for rehearsing confrontational conversations while building anxiety about the permanent changes these discussions would create in our family dynamics. The Maple Street neighborhood appeared deceptively normal as I parked in their driveway, noting the well-maintained landscaping and fresh exterior paint that suggested financial comfort rather than the austerity that genuine hardship would have required. The house itself looked better than it had during their reported period of financial crisis, with new outdoor furniture on the front porch and decorative elements that represented discretionary spending rather than essential maintenance. My parents greeted me with surprise and pleasure, assuming that my unannounced visit represented social connection rather than serious confrontation about their financial deception. Their warm welcome and genuine happiness at seeing me made the approaching conversation more difficult emotionally, highlighting the complexity of loving people whose behavior had proven manipulative and dishonest, despite their apparent affection and concern for my welfare. We settled in their living room, where I noticed additional evidence of recent purchases that contradicted their claims about careful spending necessitated by medical expenses and reduced income. New throw pillows, updated lighting fixtures, and a recent television installation suggested access to discretionary funds that were being utilized for comfort and aesthetics, while simultaneously claiming inability to cover basic living expenses without my financial assistance. The moment had arrived for direct confrontation about the discoveries that had shattered my trust and revealed the extent of their manipulation. I began by placing printed copies of the documentation I had gathered on their coffee table, creating a visual representation of the evidence that would support the serious accusations I was about to present regarding their honesty and integrity in our financial arrangements. I need to discuss some information I discovered about your financial situation that contradicts what you have told me over the past 11 months. I stated with deliberate calm, despite the emotional turmoil that threatened to overwhelm my ability to communicate rationally. The evidence suggests that you have been concealing significant assets and income sources while accepting substantial financial support that was apparently unnecessary for meeting your actual needs. The silence that followed my statement lasted several long seconds, during which I observed their expressions change from confusion to recognition to defensive preparation. The shift in their demeanor confirmed that they understood exactly what I had discovered, and that their previous representations about their circumstances had been deliberately misleading, rather than based on misunderstanding or incomplete information. My mother was the first to respond, her voice carrying the same defensive irritation that had characterized her reaction to my request for financial documentation the previous week. "Elena, I don't know what you think you found, but we have been completely honest with you about our situation. You're acting like we did something wrong by accepting help from our daughter during a medical crisis." Her response attempted to reframe my investigation as inappropriate behavior, rather than addressing the specific evidence of concealed assets and income that had been revealed through public records and documentation. The deflection strategy suggested awareness that the evidence was accurate and damaging to their credibility, requiring defensive manipulation rather than factual explanation or acknowledgement of deception. "Mom, I have documentation showing that you refinanced the house 6 months before Dad's heart attack and received $48,000 in cash," I replied, maintaining professional composure while presenting specific evidence that could not be dismissed through emotional appeals or defensive deflection. "I also have records showing that Dad has been receiving disability payments and you have been receiving Social Security benefits that together provide nearly $3,000 monthly income. These resources were never mentioned during any of our conversations about your financial hardship or need for my support." The presentation of specific figures and documentation created visible discomfort that manifested in exchanged glances between my parents and obvious preparation for coordinated response rather than spontaneous explanation. Their reaction confirmed that the concealment had been deliberate and systematic, rather than accidental omission of information they assumed I already possessed. My father entered the conversation with a tone that combined defensiveness with attempted parental authority, seeking to re-establish the traditional family hierarchy that had enabled their manipulation of my concern and gratitude. "Elena, those are private family financial matters that don't concern you. We are your parents, and we don't owe you explanations about our personal business decisions or income sources." His response revealed the fundamental problem underlying our relationship dynamics during the support period. They had simultaneously claimed that their financial circumstances were desperate enough to require my sacrifice, while asserting that their actual financial situation was private information that I had no right to question or verify. The contradiction exposed the manipulation inherent in accepting extensive financial support, while refusing transparency about the circumstances that supposedly necessitated such assistance. "Dad, those private financial matters become my concern when you ask me to cover your expenses while concealing income and assets that make my support unnecessary." I responded with growing confidence in my position and righteous anger about the extent of their deception. "I have been working 16-hour days and depleting my savings to provide money that you apparently did not need for survival, but were using to enhance your lifestyle while maintaining your own resources for discretionary spending." The conversation continued with increasing intensity as additional evidence was presented, and their explanations became more defensive and contradictory. Each piece of documentation I shared revealed new aspects of their deception, while their responses demonstrated unwillingness to acknowledge the legitimacy of my concerns or accept responsibility for the manipulation that had characterized our financial arrangements. The most painful aspect of the confrontation was not simply the confirmation of their deception, but their complete lack of remorse or recognition that their behavior had been harmful to my financial stability, professional advancement, and personal well-being. Rather than expressing regret for exploiting my love and gratitude, they maintained that their choices were justified by parental privilege and family obligations that required my support regardless of their actual circumstances. "We raised you and sacrificed everything to give you opportunities," my mother declared with emotion that was apparently intended to redirect the conversation from their deception to my ingratitude for their historical sacrifices. "After everything we have done for you, the least you can do is help us when we ask for support. We shouldn't have to justify our decisions to our own daughter." Her appeal to historical sacrifice represented the manipulation strategy that had been most effective in maintaining my compliance with their requests throughout the support period. The suggestion that questioning their honesty demonstrated ingratitude for their parental investments had previously prevented me from seeking verification of their claims or establishing reasonable boundaries around my financial contributions. However, the evidence of systematic deception had fundamentally altered the effectiveness of these emotional appeals. The parents who claimed to have sacrificed everything for my opportunities had apparently viewed those sacrifices as creating permanent obligations that justified exploiting my gratitude to fund their lifestyle preferences while concealing their actual financial capacity. Your sacrifices as parents do not justify lying to me about your financial circumstances while accepting money that you did not need. I responded with clarity that surprised me with its strength and conviction. Love and gratitude are not the same as blind obedience or unlimited financial support based on false information. You have exploited my respect for your sacrifices to manipulate me into providing unnecessary assistance while you maintained comfortable lives through concealed resources. The confrontation reached its climax when I announced my decision to terminate all financial support immediately, effective with the conversation we were having that afternoon. The decision had crystallized during the investigation period as the only appropriate response to their systematic deception and continued refusal to acknowledge the harmful impact of their manipulation. I will no longer be providing financial assistance of any kind, I stated with finality that reflected months of mounting frustration and the liberating clarity that accompanied recognition of manipulation. You have demonstrated that you possess adequate resources to maintain your lifestyle without my contributions, and your concealment of those resources while accepting my support represents a betrayal of trust that makes continued financial relationship impossible. Their reaction to this announcement revealed the depth of their sense of entitlement to my financial support, regardless of their actual circumstances or honesty about their needs. Rather than accepting responsibility for their deception, or expressing understanding about my decision to protect my own financial welfare, they responded with anger and accusations that I was abandoning family obligations during their continued health challenges. The conversation concluded without resolution or reconciliation, establishing a fundamental break in our relationship that would require significant time and changed behavior to repair. As I prepared to leave their house, I felt simultaneously devastated by the loss of the parents I had believed I knew, and liberated by the recognition that I was no longer obligated to maintain financial support based on false information and emotional manipulation. The drive home was marked by a complex mixture of grief and empowerment that reflected the profound transformation occurring in my understanding of family relationships, personal boundaries, and my own worth and capabilities. The dutiful daughter who had defined herself through service to others was beginning to evolve into someone who recognized her right to honest treatment and respect for her contributions and sacrifices. Over the following days, the emotional processing of the confrontation and its implications created space for recognition that this crisis, while painful, represented an opportunity for personal growth and relationship redefinition that could ultimately benefit all parties involved. The end of financial manipulation meant the beginning of authentic relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation of love and gratitude. The journey ahead would require developing new patterns of interaction that honored both legitimate family connections and appropriate personal boundaries. The process would be challenging and sometimes lonely, but it would also create possibilities for genuine relationship based on honesty and mutual consideration, rather than manipulation and exploitation. Most importantly, the experience had revealed capabilities and strength that I had not recognized within myself during the period when I was focused entirely on meeting others' needs at the expense of my own well-being and development. The woman who was emerging from this crisis possessed confidence and self-advocacy skills that would serve her well in all future relationships and endeavors, transforming painful betrayal into powerful personal growth that would benefit her throughout her life. The immediate aftermath of confronting my parents about their financial deception created a profound sense of disorientation that extended far beyond the specific details of our conversation. The fundamental assumptions that had guided my decision-making process for nearly 3 decades had been revealed as illusions, requiring complete reconstruction of my understanding about family relationships, personal responsibility, and the difference between love and manipulation. The process of rebuilding my life on authentic foundations would prove more challenging and more rewarding than I could have anticipated during those first difficult days following our confrontation. The silence that followed my decision to terminate financial support was initially deafening in its completeness. For 11 months, my daily routine had been structured around coordinating my parents' needs, managing their expenses, and providing emotional support during what I believed was genuine crisis requiring family solidarity. The sudden absence of these responsibilities created unexpected space in my schedule and mental capacity that felt both liberating and uncomfortably empty. My parents made no attempt to contact me during the first week following our confrontation, a silence that confirmed their expectation that I would eventually resume financial support once the emotional intensity of our disagreement subsided. Their strategy appeared to involve allowing time for my anger to diminish while maintaining their position that my demands for transparency and accountability were inappropriate intrusions into parental authority and family privacy. The miscalculation of this approach would become apparent as days extended into weeks, without any indication that I intended to restore our previous financial arrangements. The first practical consequence of ending financial support involved recalculating my personal budget to reflect the substantial resources that would now remain available for my own needs and goals. The monthly amount I had been transferring to my parents exceeded $2,000, representing more than half of my discretionary income after essential living expenses. The mathematical impact of retaining these funds created immediate possibilities for financial recovery and future planning that had been impossible during the support period. However, the psychological adjustment to keeping money that I had previously viewed as a central family obligation proved more complex than simple budget recalculation. The cultural values that had shaped my understanding of filial responsibility did not disappear immediately upon discovering my parents' deception. The internal conflict between intellectual recognition that their manipulation justified my withdrawal of support and emotional guilt about potentially abandoning family members during health challenges required careful processing and resolution. The consulting work that I had taken on to generate additional income for their support suddenly transformed from exhausting necessity into optional opportunity for professional development and accelerated financial recovery. The freelance projects that had consumed my evening and weekend hours could now be approached strategically, accepting only assignments that offered valuable experience or particularly attractive compensation, while declining work that was purely financial, motivated by family crisis requirements. The liberation from crisis-driven scheduling created space for activities and relationships that had been neglected during the intensive support period. Michael had remained patient and understanding throughout the family medical situation, but our relationship had suffered from my constant preoccupation with parental concerns and the physical exhaustion that accompanied 16-hour workdays. The restoration of normal schedule and emotional availability provided opportunity to rebuild romantic connection that had been strained by months of competing priorities. Our first dinner together without interruption from family-related phone calls or urgent financial matters felt awkward initially, highlighting how thoroughly the crisis mentality had dominated my thoughts and conversations for nearly a year. Michael's patient questions about my recent family situation created safe space for sharing the discoveries about financial deception and my decision to establish new boundaries around parental support. His response revealed both relief that the financial pressure had ended and concern about the emotional impact of discovering such extensive manipulation from people I loved deeply. The conversation with Michael also revealed the extent to which the family crisis had affected my professional performance and career trajectory. While my supervisor had been accommodating about the flexibility required for managing parental medical needs, the quality of my work had inevitably suffered from divided attention and chronic exhaustion. Several advancement opportunities had been missed during the crisis period, and important professional relationships had received inadequate attention due to competing family obligations. The recognition that my parents' deception had cost me professional opportunities as well as financial resources created additional anger that was difficult to process constructively. The manipulation had extended beyond immediate financial exploitation to include broader limitation of my career development and personal growth. The time and energy I had devoted to supporting unnecessary expenses could have been invested in professional advancement that would have benefited my long-term earning capacity and career satisfaction. However, this realization also created motivation for strategic career planning that could recover lost ground, while building toward future goals that reflected my actual values and aspirations, rather than crisis-driven survival thinking. The Phoenix Community Development Corporation had provided valuable experience and meaningful work, but the position had never been intended as permanent career destination. The financial stability created by ending parental support provided foundation for considering advancement opportunities that might require initial risk or investment in additional education or certification. During the second week following the confrontation, I began receiving indirect communication from my parents through my Aunt Maria, my mother's sister who lived in Tucson and maintained regular contact with our immediate family. Aunt Maria's initial phone call was presented as social conversation, but quickly revealed that my parents had contacted her seeking intervention in our dispute about financial arrangements and family obligations. The conversation with Aunt Maria provided insight into my parents' interpretation of recent events and their strategy for restoring the previous relationship dynamic. According to her account, my parents viewed my demands for financial transparency as evidence that American culture had corrupted my understanding of family loyalty and respect for parental authority. They had characterized my investigation into their assets and income as inappropriate behavior motivated by greed or external influence rather than legitimate concern about deception and manipulation. More concerning was their assertion that my withdrawal of financial support during their ongoing health recovery represented abandonment of fundamental family obligations that transcended any disagreement about communication or transparency. They had portrayed themselves as vulnerable elderly parents being punished for exercising appropriate privacy about personal financial matters while depending on an ungrateful daughter who had forgotten the sacrifices that enabled her education and professional opportunities. Aunt Maria's well-intentioned mediation attempt created opportunity for me to articulate my perspective about the difference between reasonable family support during genuine crisis and enabling manipulation through financial assistance based on deliberately misleading information. The conversation helped clarify my own thinking about appropriate boundaries and expectations for family relationships that balanced legitimate obligations with protection of personal well-being and financial security. The discussion also revealed that my parents' version of events had omitted crucial details about the concealed assets and income sources that had been discovered during my investigation. Aunt Maria was surprised to learn about the substantial home refinancing proceeds, disability payments, and Social Security benefits that contradicted the narrative of desperate financial need that had motivated my extensive support. Her reaction confirmed that their manipulation had been deliberate, rather than based on misunderstanding about their actual circumstances. By the third week following the confrontation, the emotional processing had progressed sufficiently to allow strategic planning about future career and personal development goals. The financial resources that were no longer committed to parental support created possibilities for advancement that had been unavailable during the crisis period. The most attractive option involved pursuing a master's degree in public administration that would enhance my qualifications for senior leadership positions in nonprofit organizations or government agencies. The Arizona State University Master of Public Administration program offered evening and weekend classes designed for working professionals, making advanced education compatible with continued employment at Phoenix Community Development Corporation. The tuition costs that had seemed prohibitive during the period of family financial support became manageable with careful budgeting of the resources that were now available for personal investment rather than parental assistance. The decision to pursue graduate education represented a fundamental shift from crisis-driven thinking focused on immediate survival toward strategic planning for long-term professional development and personal fulfillment. The transformation from someone who viewed her resources as primarily obligated to others toward someone who recognized her right to invest in her own future reflected profound change in self-perception and understanding of personal worth and potential. The application process for graduate school provided structured activity that channeled the energy previously devoted to family crisis management toward constructive goal pursuit. The personal statement requirements created opportunity for reflection about career objectives and values that had been neglected during the intensive support period. The process revealed that the family crisis had delayed but not eliminated professional ambitions that remained viable with focused effort and strategic planning. Concurrently with educational planning, I began establishing financial practices that would accelerate recovery from the resources depleted during the support period while building foundation for future security and opportunity. The savings account that had been nearly exhausted through family assistance could be replenished systematically through automatic transfers that treated personal financial health as priority equal to any other obligation or commitment. The consulting work that had been necessary for generating additional family support income became an optional source of supplementary earnings that could be applied toward education costs or accelerated savings rather than crisis management. The choice to accept or decline freelance projects could now be based on professional development value and compensation attractiveness, rather than desperate need for additional resources to meet family obligations. During the fourth week following the confrontation, my parents made their first direct contact since our argument, initiating conversation through my mother's phone call that attempted to restore normal communication patterns without acknowledging the issues that had precipitated our conflict. Her tone was carefully neutral, avoiding reference to financial matters while emphasizing concern about my welfare and desire to maintain family relationship despite recent disagreements. The call represented a test of my commitment to the boundaries established during our confrontation and my resolve to maintain new standards for honest communication in family relationships. The temptation to accept restoration of comfortable interaction without addressing underlying issues was significant, particularly given my genuine love for my parents despite their manipulative behavior regarding financial support. However, the weeks of reflection and planning had strengthened my conviction that authentic relationship required acknowledgement of past deception and commitment to future transparency, rather than superficial reconciliation that ignored fundamental trust violations. My response emphasized that I remained open to rebuilding our relationship based on honest communication and mutual respect, but would not pretend that recent discoveries about their financial manipulation had not occurred or did not require acknowledgement and behavior change. The conversation concluded without resolution but established the parameters for any future relationship restoration that would need to include their acceptance of responsibility for deception and manipulation, rather than my acceptance of continued exploitation disguised as family obligation. The process would require time and demonstrated change in their approach to financial transparency and respect for my contributions and sacrifices. The month following the confrontation had transformed my daily experience from crisis-driven reactivity to proactive planning and strategic thinking about personal and professional development. The energy that had been consumed by family emergency management was now available for activities that enhanced my capabilities and expanded my opportunities for meaningful contribution and personal fulfillment. Most importantly, the experience had revealed strength and analytical capabilities that I had not recognized during the period when my identity was primarily defined through service to others' needs. The woman who was emerging from this crisis possessed confidence in her judgment and willingness to advocate for her own interests that would serve her well in all future relationships and endeavors. The painful discovery of parental manipulation had ultimately created opportunity for personal growth that would benefit her throughout her life, transforming betrayal into empowerment through courage and strategic action. The acceptance letter from Arizona State University's Master of Public Administration program arrived on a Thursday morning in late November, marking the formal beginning of my transformation from someone who reacted to family crises toward someone who strategically built capabilities for long-term success and meaningful contribution. The letter represented far more than admission to graduate school. It symbolized my commitment to investing in personal development rather than indefinitely subsidizing others' lifestyle choices through financial manipulation and emotional exploitation. The decision to pursue advanced education while maintaining full-time employment required careful planning and disciplined time management that drew upon organizational skills developed through years of nonprofit administration and crisis coordination. However, the energy that had previously been consumed by managing my parents' fabricated financial emergencies was now available for structured learning and professional development that would enhance my qualifications for leadership positions in organizations dedicated to community improvement and social justice. The first semester curriculum included foundational courses in public policy analysis, organizational management, budgetary planning, and ethical leadership that provided theoretical frameworks for understanding the systemic challenges I had observed throughout my career in community development work. The academic content resonated powerfully with practical experience gained through implementing affordable housing programs and financial literacy initiatives for immigrant families whose circumstances mirrored my own family's historical journey toward economic stability and community integration. The evening class schedule required adjustment to my daily routine that had become comfortable during the month following my confrontation with my parents about their financial deception. The Tuesday and Thursday evening seminars extended my workday significantly, but the intellectual stimulation and professional networking opportunities provided energy that offset the additional time commitment. The program attracted working professionals from diverse backgrounds in government, nonprofit organizations, and private sector companies seeking to enhance their public service capabilities. My classmates included city planning specialists, social services administrators, legislative staff members, and corporate executives transitioning toward careers focused on community impact rather than profit maximization. The diversity of experience and perspective created learning environment that challenged assumptions and expanded understanding of effective approaches to complex social problems. The collaborative projects and case study analyses provided exposure to strategic thinking processes that would prove invaluable for career advancement and community leadership roles. The academic workload demanded efficient time management that eliminated activities and commitments that did not contribute to professional development or personal well-being. The consulting projects that had been necessary for generating additional income during the family support period became optional opportunities that could be selected based on learning value and compensation attractiveness rather than financial desperation. The strategic approach to freelance work generated higher quality assignments with better compensation, while requiring fewer total hours than the crisis-driven acceptance of any available project. The financial resources that were no longer committed to parental support provided cushion that allowed declining consulting opportunities that offered minimal learning value or inadequate compensation relative to time investment required. The selective approach to additional work created space for academic success while maintaining income levels that supported comfortable lifestyle and accelerated savings toward future goals, including potential home ownership and continued education beyond the master's degree. The first semester's academic performance exceeded my expectations and confirmed that the intellectual capabilities demonstrated during undergraduate studies remained sharp despite years focused on practical implementation rather than theoretical analysis. The research papers and policy analysis assignments received consistently high evaluations from professors who noted analytical depth and practical insight that reflected real-world experience with community development challenges and organizational management issues. The success in academic work rebuilt confidence in my intellectual abilities that had been overshadowed by the emotional exhaustion and crisis mentality that characterized the family support period. The recognition from faculty and classmates that my contributions to class discussions and group projects reflected valuable expertise created foundation for viewing myself as someone with leadership potential, rather than primarily as someone obligated to respond to others' needs and crises through personal sacrifice. During the winter break between semesters, Michael proposed marriage during a weekend trip to Sedona that had been planned to celebrate the completion of my first semester of graduate school. The proposal occurred at sunrise from Cathedral Rock, with the red sandstone formations providing dramatic backdrop for his declaration of commitment to building future together based on mutual support and shared values, rather than crisis management and competing family obligations. The engagement represented culmination of relationship rebuilding that had occurred following the termination of financial support to my parents, and the restoration of normal schedule that allowed adequate attention to romantic partnership. Michael's patience during the family crisis period and his support for my educational goals demonstrated character and commitment that provided foundation for long-term partnership based on genuine compatibility rather than convenience or social expectations. The wedding planning process required balancing academic obligations with social coordination while managing the complex family dynamics created by my ongoing estrangement from parents who had not acknowledged their financial manipulation or demonstrated willingness to rebuild relationship based on honest communication and mutual respect. The decision about their participation in wedding ceremony would require careful consideration of my desire for family connection versus my commitment to maintaining boundaries that protected against continued manipulation. The spring semester course load included advanced seminars in strategic planning, program evaluation, grant writing, and community engagement that provided specialized skills directly applicable to senior leadership positions in nonprofit organizations and government agencies. The grant writing course proved particularly valuable, building upon experience gained through consulting work, while providing systematic understanding of federal funding processes and foundation relationship management that would enhance my professional marketability significantly. The program evaluation course introduced quantitative and qualitative research methods that transformed my understanding of how to measure program effectiveness and demonstrate community impact to stakeholders, including board members, government funders, and private donors. The skills developed through academic coursework enhanced my contributions to Phoenix Community Development Corporation, while preparing me for advancement opportunities that would require sophisticated analytical capabilities and strategic thinking about organizational development. The Community Engagement Seminar examined best practices for authentic stakeholder involvement in policy development and program implementation, addressing challenges I had observed in my current position, where community members were often consulted after decisions had been made, rather than meaningfully involved in planning processes that affected their neighborhoods and families. The academic content provided frameworks for more effective approaches that honored community wisdom and cultural values, while achieving measurable improvements in housing stability and economic opportunity. The second semester academic performance maintained the high standards established during the fall term, with research papers and project presentations receiving recognition for innovative approaches to persistent community development challenges. The combination of theoretical knowledge gained through coursework and practical experience accumulated through professional work created unique perspective that professors and classmates found valuable for understanding implementation barriers and potential solutions that addressed root causes, rather than symptoms of systemic problems. The networking opportunities provided through graduate school created connections with professionals whose career trajectories demonstrated possibilities for advancement that had not been apparent during the period when my energy was primarily focused on family crisis management. Alumni working in senior positions with city government, state agencies, and major nonprofit organizations provided mentorship and advice about career planning that expanded my understanding of potential pathways toward increased responsibility and community impact. One particularly valuable connection developed with Dr. Patricia Morales, an alumna who served as Assistant City Manager for Community Development in Phoenix, and had previously worked in nonprofit leadership roles similar to my current position. Her willingness to provide informal mentoring about career advancement strategies and professional development opportunities proved instrumental in developing long-term goals that extended beyond immediate recovery from the family crisis period toward sustained achievement and leadership development. Dr. Morales' guidance emphasized the importance of building expertise in specific areas while maintaining broad understanding of interconnected community development challenges including housing affordability, economic opportunity, education access, and social services coordination. Her recommendation to develop specialization in affordable housing policy and community finance aligned with my interests and experience, while providing clear pathway toward advancement opportunities that would increase salary potential and community impact significantly. The mentoring relationship also provided perspective on work-life balance and personal development that had been lacking during the crisis-driven period, when professional obligations and family support demands competed for limited time and energy. Dr. Morales' example demonstrated that career advancement and personal fulfillment were compatible with maintaining meaningful relationships and community connections, providing model for integrated approach to professional success and personal well-being. The summer between the first and second years of graduate school provided opportunity for intensive internship with the Arizona Department of Housing that offered exposure to state-level policy development and program administration. The internship position was competitive and provided stipend that supplemented my regular income while offering professional experience that would enhance my qualifications for advancement opportunities following graduation. The internship work involved research and analysis supporting the development of new affordable housing initiatives that would expand homeownership opportunities for moderate-income families throughout Arizona. The project required coordination with multiple stakeholders including legislative staff, advocacy organizations, housing developers, and community representatives to identify barriers to homeownership and develop policy recommendations that addressed financing challenges while maintaining program sustainability. The internship experience provided exposure to high-level strategic planning and policy development processes that exceeded anything available through my current position at Phoenix Community Development Corporation. The complexity of balancing competing interests while developing politically feasible solutions to housing affordability challenges provided valuable preparation for senior leadership roles that would require sophisticated negotiation and consensus-building capabilities. The research conducted during the internship revealed significant gaps in affordable housing opportunities for families whose incomes exceeded limits for traditional subsidized housing programs, but remained insufficient for conventional mortgage qualification. The analysis identified potential solutions including down payment assistance programs, shared equity initiatives, and employer-assisted housing that could expand homeownership access while generating positive economic impact for communities throughout the state. The internship supervisor's evaluation recognized exceptional analytical capabilities and professional maturity that suggested strong potential for career advancement in housing policy and community development fields. The recommendation letter provided by the department director would prove valuable for future job applications and graduate school references, establishing credibility with senior professionals who could provide career advancement opportunities. The combination of academic coursework, internship experience, and continued employment at Phoenix Community Development Corporation created comprehensive preparation for advancement opportunities that would increase both compensation and community impact. The professional development achieved during the first year of graduate school exceeded expectations and provided foundation for strategic career planning that could lead to positions with significantly greater responsibility and influence. Most importantly, the academic and professional success demonstrated capabilities and potential that had been overshadowed during the family crisis period, when my identity was primarily defined through service to others' needs rather than development of personal talents and leadership abilities. The woman who was emerging through focused effort and strategic planning possessed confidence and expertise that would serve her well in pursuing ambitious goals, including homeownership, career advancement, and eventually the financial success that would enable her to demonstrate her worth to family members who had underestimated her potential and exploited her generosity. The completion of my Master of Public Administration degree in May 2025 represented the culmination of 2 years of intensive study and professional development that had transformed both my capabilities and my understanding of what constituted achievable career objectives. The graduation ceremony at Arizona State University provided an opportunity to reflect upon the profound personal growth that had occurred since the discovery of my parents' financial deception, recognizing how their manipulation had ultimately catalyzed positive change that exceeded anything I had previously believed possible for my professional trajectory. The academic achievements during graduate school had established a foundation of credibility and expertise that opened advancement opportunities previously unavailable through experience alone. The cumulative grade point average of 3.92 reflected consistent excellence in coursework that challenged my analytical abilities while developing sophisticated understanding of public policy development, organizational leadership, and strategic planning processes essential for senior management positions in community development organizations. The thesis research project examining innovative financing mechanisms for affordable housing development had received recognition from faculty members and generated interest from policymakers seeking evidence-based solutions to housing affordability challenges throughout Arizona. The research findings would later prove instrumental in securing federal funding for pilot programs that expanded homeownership opportunities for moderate-income families, demonstrating the practical value of academic work that bridged theoretical knowledge with real-world implementation challenges. Dr. Patricia Morales attended the graduation ceremony as my guest, symbolizing the mentoring relationship that had provided guidance and encouragement throughout the challenging process of balancing academic obligations with professional responsibilities and personal relationship development. Her presence represented recognition of the potential she had identified during our initial conversations about career planning and her continued investment in supporting my advancement toward leadership positions that would maximize community impact. The week following graduation brought the opportunity I had been strategically preparing to pursue through targeted education and professional development. The Phoenix Office of Housing and Community Development announced the creation of a senior housing policy analyst position that would coordinate affordable housing initiatives throughout the metropolitan area, while developing partnerships with nonprofit organizations, private developers, and state agencies to address housing affordability challenges comprehensively. The position description aligned precisely with the expertise I had developed through graduate coursework, internship experience, and continued employment at Phoenix Community Development Corporation. The responsibilities included policy analysis, program evaluation, grant writing, stakeholder coordination, and strategic planning that utilized the full range of capabilities I had cultivated during the preceding 2 years of focused professional development. The application process required comprehensive documentation of academic achievements, professional experience, and specialized knowledge that demonstrated qualification for responsibilities significantly exceeding those of my current position. The portfolio I submitted included research papers from graduate coursework, evaluation reports from internship supervision, and letters of recommendation from faculty members and professional colleagues who could attest to my analytical capabilities and leadership potential. The interview process extended over 3 weeks and involved multiple rounds of evaluation, including written policy analysis exercises, presentations to senior staff members, and panel discussions with community stakeholders who would be affected by housing policy decisions. The complexity of the selection process reflected the significance of the position and the expectation that the successful candidate would contribute immediately to high-level strategic planning and policy development initiatives. The policy analysis exercise required developing recommendations for expanding affordable housing opportunities in underserved neighborhoods, while addressing concerns about gentrification and community displacement that could result from increased development activity. The challenge demanded sophisticated understanding of housing finance mechanisms, community engagement strategies, and political feasibility considerations that would influence implementation success. The presentation component evaluated my ability to communicate complex policy concepts to diverse audiences, including elected officials, community representatives, and technical experts who possessed varying levels of familiarity with housing development processes. The exercise demonstrated skills essential for building consensus among stakeholders with different priorities and perspectives regarding housing policy objectives and implementation strategies. The panel discussion format assessed my capacity for collaborative problem-solving and conflict resolution in situations where community members expressed concerns about proposed housing developments in their neighborhoods. The simulation required balancing legitimate community concerns with broader housing affordability objectives, while identifying solutions that addressed multiple stakeholder interests simultaneously. The comprehensive evaluation process concluded with individual interviews conducted by the department director, deputy city manager, and community development board chair, who assessed my understanding of Phoenix housing challenges and potential contributions to policy development initiatives that would guide housing investment decisions for the following decade. The conversations explored my vision for addressing housing affordability while maintaining neighborhood character and supporting economic development objectives throughout the metropolitan area. The job offer arrived by phone call on a Friday afternoon in June, providing salary and benefits package that exceeded my expectations while offering professional development opportunities that would continue building expertise in housing finance, community development, and public policy analysis. The compensation represented nearly double my current salary at Phoenix Community Development Corporation, creating financial foundation that would accelerate progress toward personal goals, including homeownership and long-term financial security. The benefits package included comprehensive health insurance, retirement contributions, professional development funding, and flexible scheduling arrangements that would support work-life balance while maintaining high-performance standards. The professional development support would enable continued education through conferences, certification programs, and potential doctoral study that could further enhance career advancement opportunities in the future. The decision to accept the position required careful consideration of the impact on my relationship with Phoenix Community Development Corporation, where colleagues and supervisors had been supportive throughout my graduate education and provided flexibility necessary for academic success. The transition needed to be managed professionally to maintain positive relationships while pursuing advancement opportunities that would increase my capacity for community impact through policy-level influence. The resignation conversation with my current supervisor was handled with appreciation for the organization's investment in my professional development and commitment to ensuring smooth transition for ongoing projects and client relationships. The 2-week notice period provided opportunity to complete pending assignments while documenting processes and relationships that would facilitate continuity for my replacement. The Phoenix Community Development Corporation leadership expressed pride in my advancement, while acknowledging that the organization had benefited significantly from my graduate education through enhanced capabilities and fresh perspectives that had improved program quality and effectiveness. The positive conclusion to my employment relationship maintained professional connections that would prove valuable for future collaboration between city government and nonprofit organizations. The transition period between positions provided opportunity to prepare for expanded responsibilities, while celebrating the achievement of career advancement that had been strategically pursued through focused effort and disciplined professional development. The new position would require deeper expertise in policy analysis and stakeholder coordination than my previous role, demanding continued learning and adaptation to meet performance expectations at the senior professional level. Michael's support throughout the interview process and his enthusiasm about my career advancement, demonstrated the strength of our partnership and his commitment to supporting my professional goals alongside our shared objectives for marriage and family development. His own career progress in software engineering provided foundation for household financial security that would enable strategic decision-making about future opportunities without pressure for immediate income maximization. Our wedding planning had progressed smoothly during the spring semester and graduation period, with ceremony scheduled for August to allow honeymoon travel before beginning the new position in September. The timing would provide transition period for adjusting to married life, while preparing for increased professional responsibilities that would require enhanced time management and organizational skills. The wedding planning process had required difficult decisions about my parents' participation given their continued refusal to acknowledge the financial manipulation that had precipitated our estrangement. After extensive consideration and discussion with Michael, we decided to invite them to the ceremony while maintaining clear boundaries about financial discussions and future relationship expectations. The invitation represented hope for eventual reconciliation based on honest communication and mutual respect, rather than accommodation of manipulation or exploitation. The gesture acknowledged their historical role in my development, while establishing that future relationship would require recognition of appropriate boundaries and consideration for my well-being alongside their own preferences and expectations. Their response to the wedding invitation would provide indication of whether they possessed willingness to rebuild relationship based on changed dynamics, or whether their sense of entitlement to financial support without accountability would prevent genuine reconciliation. The outcome would influence long-term family relationship patterns and my approach to maintaining connections that honored both family bonds and personal integrity. The summer months before beginning the new position provided opportunity for intensive preparation, including research into Phoenix housing policy history, analysis of current challenges and opportunities, and relationship building with community stakeholders who would be essential partners in future policy development initiatives. The preparation work demonstrated commitment to excellence that would establish credibility with colleagues and community members from the beginning of my tenure. The housing policy research revealed significant opportunities for innovative approaches to affordability challenges that could serve as models for other metropolitan areas facing similar problems. The analysis identified potential federal funding sources, private sector partnership opportunities, and community engagement strategies that could generate sustainable solutions while building broad stakeholder support for implementation. The stakeholder relationship development involved attending community meetings, nonprofit organization events, and professional association gatherings, where I could begin establishing credibility and understanding of community priorities that would inform policy development work. The networking activities created foundation for collaborative approaches to housing challenges that would require coordination among multiple organizations and interest groups. The comprehensive preparation for the new position reflected understanding that career advancement required not only technical competence but also relationship building and strategic thinking capabilities that would enable effective leadership in complex organizational and political environments. The investment and preparation demonstrated commitment to excellence that would distinguish my contributions and create foundation for continued advancement opportunities. The career trajectory from Community Development Coordinator to Senior Policy Analyst represented achievement that exceeded expectations I had held during the family crisis period, when professional advancement seemed secondary to survival and obligation management. The transformation demonstrated the power of strategic planning and disciplined effort in creating opportunities that had previously seemed unavailable or inappropriate to pursue given family circumstances and financial constraints. Most significantly, the professional success provided foundation for financial independence and security that would enable strategic decision-making about future opportunities while maintaining appropriate boundaries in family relationships. The increased earning capacity created possibilities for homeownership, investment, and eventual achievement of financial position that would demonstrate capabilities my parents had underestimated while exploiting my generosity and family loyalty. The transition into the Senior Housing Policy Analyst position at the Phoenix Office of Housing and Community Development marked the beginning of the most professionally fulfilling period of my career, demonstrating how strategic preparation and disciplined effort could create opportunities for meaningful impact that extended far beyond personal advancement. The first 6 months in the role established patterns of excellence that would define my contributions to housing policy development while building credibility with colleagues, community stakeholders, and senior leadership throughout Phoenix city government. The initial weeks of the position required comprehensive analysis of existing housing programs and policy frameworks that had been developed over the preceding decade to address affordability challenges throughout the metropolitan area. The review process revealed both successful initiatives that could be expanded and gaps in service delivery that created barriers to homeownership for moderate-income families who exceeded income limits for traditional subsidized housing but lacked resources for conventional mortgage qualification. The analytical work drew extensively upon research methods and policy analysis techniques developed during graduate school coursework, demonstrating the practical value of academic preparation for addressing complex public policy challenges. The systematic approach to program evaluation identified quantifiable outcomes and implementation barriers that provided foundation for evidence-based recommendations to improve program effectiveness while maintaining fiscal responsibility and political viability. The most significant finding from the initial analysis concerned the disconnect between housing production incentives and actual community needs in specific neighborhoods throughout Phoenix. The existing policy framework provided development subsidies based on unit count and affordability levels without adequate consideration of geographic distribution or community infrastructure capacity to support increased residential density. The misalignment resulted in concentrated affordable housing development in certain areas, while other neighborhoods remained inaccessible to moderate-income families seeking homeownership opportunities. The research findings generated interest from department leadership and provided foundation for comprehensive policy reform that would restructure housing incentives to promote geographic diversity while maintaining affordability objectives. The reform proposal required extensive stakeholder consultation and political analysis to ensure broad support from community organizations, private developers, and elected officials whose approval would be necessary for implementation. The stakeholder engagement process provided opportunity to demonstrate collaborative leadership capabilities that had been developed through graduate school group projects and refined through professional experience in community development work. The approach emphasized authentic consultation that honored community wisdom and cultural values, while building consensus around policy solutions that addressed multiple stakeholder interests simultaneously. The community meetings conducted throughout Phoenix neighborhoods revealed significant variation in housing preferences and development priorities that needed to be reflected in policy design to ensure effectiveness and sustainability. The engagement process identified specific barriers to homeownership that differed by neighborhood characteristics, household composition, and cultural background, requiring tailored approaches that could not be addressed through universal program design. The comprehensive stakeholder consultation generated enthusiasm for housing policy reform that reflected community input while maintaining technical sophistication necessary for successful implementation. The collaborative approach built political support that would prove essential for navigating the approval process through city council and administrative review procedures that could delay or derail policy initiatives lacking broad stakeholder endorsement. The policy development work required coordination with multiple city departments including planning, economic development, finance, and legal services to ensure comprehensive consideration of implementation challenges and regulatory compliance requirements. The interdepartmental collaboration demonstrated project management and communication skills that enhanced my reputation within city government while advancing housing policy objectives effectively. The planning department coordination addressed zoning regulations and development standards that influenced housing costs and neighborhood compatibility for affordable housing projects. The collaboration identified regulatory barriers that increased development expenses unnecessarily while providing limited community benefit, creating opportunities for streamlined approval processes that could reduce housing costs while maintaining appropriate quality and safety standards. The Economic Development Department partnership explored connections between housing affordability and workforce development that could strengthen both policy areas through integrated planning and resource allocation. The analysis revealed that housing costs significantly influenced employment patterns and business location decisions, suggesting that housing policy could serve economic development objectives while addressing affordability challenges simultaneously. The Finance Department collaboration ensured fiscal sustainability of proposed policy reforms, while identifying potential revenue sources that could support expanded housing programs without requiring significant tax increases or service reductions in other city departments. The financial analysis demonstrated that strategic housing investment could generate positive economic returns through increased property tax revenue and reduced infrastructure costs over the long term. The Legal Services Coordination addressed regulatory compliance requirements and potential legal challenges that could arise from policy reforms affecting private property rights and development procedures. The legal review identified approaches to policy design that would minimize litigation risk while achieving affordability objectives through constitutionally appropriate mechanisms. The comprehensive interdepartmental collaboration culminated in draft policy recommendations that reflected technical expertise while maintaining political feasibility and community support. The proposed reforms would restructure housing incentives to promote geographic diversity, streamline development approval processes, and expand financing options for moderate-income homebuyers while maintaining fiscal responsibility and neighborhood compatibility requirements. The draft policy presentation to senior city leadership generated enthusiastic support that led to formal adoption as priority initiative for the following fiscal year. The approval process demonstrated the value of thorough preparation and stakeholder engagement in building political consensus around complex policy reforms that required sustained commitment and resource allocation to achieve implementation success. The successful policy development work established my reputation as innovative analyst capable of generating practical solutions to persistent community challenges while managing complex stakeholder relationships effectively. The recognition led to additional responsibilities, including representation of Phoenix housing policy at state and federal levels, where coordination with other jurisdictions could amplify local initiatives through regional collaboration and resource sharing. The state-level engagement involved participation in Arizona Housing Development Council meetings, where policy analysts from multiple jurisdictions shared best practices and coordinated advocacy for federal funding that could support local housing programs. The networking opportunities created professional relationships that would prove valuable for accessing technical assistance and securing competitive grants that required interjurisdictional partnerships. The federal liaison work included coordination with Department of Housing and Urban Development staff regarding compliance requirements and funding opportunities that could expand Phoenix housing programs while meeting national policy objectives. The federal relationship building created access to policy development resources and pilot program opportunities that could provide additional funding for innovative approaches to housing affordability challenges. The expanded responsibilities required travel to Washington, D.C. and other metropolitan areas to participate in conferences and working groups that addressed housing policy development at national scale. The professional development opportunities enhanced my understanding of emerging trends and best practices that could be adapted for Phoenix implementation, while contributing to national policy discussions that would influence future federal housing initiatives. The national engagement provided exposure to housing policy innovations that had been successful in other jurisdictions and could be modified for implementation in Phoenix. The learning opportunities included financing mechanisms, community engagement strategies, and regulatory approaches that had demonstrated effectiveness in addressing affordability challenges while maintaining political support and community acceptance. The professional recognition generated by successful policy development work led to speaking invitations at national conferences, where I presented Phoenix housing policy innovations to audiences of policymakers, nonprofit leaders, and academic researchers interested in replicable approaches to urban housing challenges. The speaking opportunities enhanced my professional credibility while promoting Phoenix as model for effective housing policy development. The conference presentations generated interest from policy organizations and research institutes that invited collaboration on housing policy research projects that could influence federal policy development and funding priorities. The research partnerships provided opportunities for publication in professional journals that would further enhance my credentials while contributing to evidence-based policymaking at national level. The combination of successful local policy development, state-level coordination, federal relationship building, and national professional engagement established comprehensive expertise in housing policy that positioned me for advancement opportunities within Phoenix city government or transition to senior positions with state agencies, federal departments, or national nonprofit organizations focused on housing and community development. The professional success during the first year in the senior housing policy analyst position exceeded expectations while providing foundation for continued career advancement that could lead to department leadership roles with increased compensation and broader community impact. The trajectory demonstrated how strategic preparation through graduate education and disciplined professional development could create opportunities that had seemed unattainable during periods of family crisis and financial constraint. Most significantly, the career advancement generated financial security that enabled strategic planning for major purchases, including home ownership, while building investment portfolio that would provide long-term wealth accumulation and retirement security. The increased earning capacity created possibilities for demonstrating financial success that would challenge family assumptions about my capabilities, while establishing foundation for independence that could not be threatened by others, manipulation, or exploitation. The professional recognition achieved during my first year as senior housing policy analyst created opportunities for advancement that would fundamentally transform my financial position, while establishing the foundation for long-term wealth accumulation. The combination of increased compensation, strategic investment planning, and disciplined financial management enabled systematic progress toward economic independence that had seemed impossible during the period when my resources were committed to supporting my parents' fabricated financial emergencies. The salary increase associated with the policy analyst position had more than doubled my annual income compared to my previous role at Phoenix Community Development Corporation. The substantial compensation improvement created immediate opportunities for enhanced lifestyle and accelerated savings that required careful planning to maximize long-term financial benefit while maintaining reasonable living expenses and investment in continued professional development. The financial planning process began with comprehensive analysis of my current economic position and development of strategic objectives that would guide resource allocation decisions over the following decade. The assessment revealed that eliminating financial support to my parents had created foundation for wealth building that could be enhanced through systematic approach to savings, investment, and career advancement that would compound returns over time. The primary financial objective involved establishing emergency fund equivalent to 12 months of living expenses that would provide security against unexpected circumstances, while creating foundation for strategic career decisions based on professional development potential rather than immediate income necessity. The emergency fund target required disciplined savings but was achievable within 18 months given the increased compensation and reduced expenses associated with ending parental financial support. The secondary objective focused on home ownership within 3 years that would provide stability and investment potential, while eliminating rental payments that represented significant monthly expense without equity-building benefit. The homeownership goal required substantial down payment accumulation along with qualification for mortgage financing that would reflect improved income and credit position achieved through strategic financial management. The tertiary objective involved building diversified investment portfolio that would generate long-term wealth appreciation through systematic contributions to retirement accounts, taxable investment accounts, and potential real estate investments that could provide passive income and appreciation over extended time periods. The investment strategy required education about financial markets and risk management, while maintaining focus on consistent contributions that would benefit from compound growth. The implementation of strategic financial planning required professional guidance from certified financial planner, who specialized in wealth building for young professionals seeking to maximize long-term economic security, while maintaining lifestyle quality that supported career advancement and personal fulfillment. The advisory relationship provided expertise in investment selection, tax optimization, and risk management that enhanced returns, while protecting against common financial planning mistakes. The financial advisor consultation revealed opportunities for tax-advantaged savings through maximizing contributions to employer-sponsored retirement plans, establishing individual retirement accounts, and utilizing health savings accounts that provided triple tax benefits for medical expenses while building long-term investment assets. The tax optimization strategies reduced current tax liability while accelerating wealth accumulation through compound growth in tax-protected accounts. The investment allocation strategy emphasized diversified portfolio construction that balanced growth potential with risk management through combination of domestic and international equity investments, fixed income securities, and alternative investments that provided exposure to different economic sectors and geographic markets. The diversification approach reduced portfolio volatility while maintaining potential for significant long-term appreciation that could support major financial objectives. The home ownership preparation process required research into Phoenix real estate markets to identify neighborhoods that offered reasonable purchase prices, while providing potential for appreciation and convenient access to employment centers and recreational amenities. The market analysis revealed several emerging areas where housing values remained affordable, despite proximity to desirable features that suggested strong, long-term investment potential. The mortgage pre-qualification process demonstrated that improved income and disciplined credit management had created eligibility for favorable financing terms that would minimize borrowing costs while maximizing purchasing power for home acquisition. The lending consultation revealed potential for purchasing property valued significantly higher than previous estimates based on conservative income projections and debt-to-income calculations. The house hunting process extended over several months while maintaining focus on properties that represented sound investment value rather than immediate lifestyle preferences that might compromise long-term financial objectives. The systematic approach to property evaluation considered location factors, condition assessment, and appreciation potential that would support wealth building while providing comfortable living environment for establishing married life with Michael. The selected property was a 3-bedroom ranch home in the Arcadia neighborhood that offered excellent schools, convenient access to downtown Phoenix, and strong historic appreciation trends that suggested continued value growth over extended ownership period. The purchase price represented reasonable value relative to comparable properties while requiring down payment that could be managed within established savings timeline. The home purchase process required coordination of financing, inspection, insurance, and closing procedures that demonstrated project management capabilities while achieving major personal milestone that represented transition from renter to property owner with accompanying equity building and tax benefits. The successful real estate acquisition provided foundation for wealth building that would appreciate independently of employment income while establishing stability for family planning and continued career development. The mortgage structure included accelerated payment schedule that would reduce total interest costs while building equity faster than standard amortization timeline. The additional principal payments were manageable within budget constraints while significantly reducing total borrowing costs and accelerating path to complete property ownership that would eliminate housing costs while building substantial asset value. The homeownership achievement coincided with promotion opportunity within Phoenix city government that would expand responsibilities while providing additional compensation increase that could accelerate progress toward financial independence objectives. The housing policy director position became available through retirement of long-serving department leader who recommended my advancement based on demonstrated expertise and successful policy development accomplishments. The director position represented significant advancement in responsibility and compensation that would oversee comprehensive housing programs throughout Phoenix, while managing substantial budget and coordinating policy development with elected officials and senior city leadership. The role required extensive experience in housing policy analysis, stakeholder management, and program administration that aligned perfectly with capabilities developed through graduate education and professional experience. The interview process for the director position included presentations to city council members and community stakeholder groups that evaluated policy knowledge, leadership capabilities, and vision for expanding housing opportunities while managing competing interests and resource constraints. The evaluation demonstrated readiness for executive-level responsibility that would influence housing policy for hundreds of thousands of Phoenix residents. The successful advancement to housing policy director created substantial salary increase that exceeded 6-figure annual compensation for the first time in my career, while providing comprehensive benefits package that supported long-term financial security through enhanced retirement contributions and professional development opportunities. The compensation improvement accelerated progress toward all financial objectives while establishing credibility for future advancement opportunities. The director responsibilities required strategic thinking about housing policy development that could influence regional approaches to affordability challenges while positioning Phoenix as national leader in innovative housing solutions. The role provided opportunities for policy impact that extended beyond local boundaries, while building professional reputation that could support future career advancement in state government, federal agencies, or private sector consulting. The increased compensation and professional recognition created foundation for enhanced investment strategy that could include real estate acquisitions beyond primary residence through rental property investments that would generate passive income while building wealth through appreciation and tax benefits. The real estate investment approach required additional education and professional guidance, while offering potential for significant long-term wealth accumulation. The strategic approach to wealth building through real estate investment focused on acquiring rental properties in emerging neighborhoods, where housing values remained affordable, despite proximity to employment centers and transportation infrastructure that suggested strong appreciation potential. The investment strategy required substantial down payments but offered potential for positive cash flow and significant appreciation over extended holding periods. The first rental property acquisition involved duplex purchase in Central Phoenix that provided immediate rental income while offering potential for value-added improvements that could increase both rental rates and property value over time. The investment required comprehensive analysis of rental market conditions, property management requirements, and financial projections that demonstrated positive returns while building equity through mortgage principal reduction and property appreciation. The rental property management required developing landlord capabilities including tenant screening, lease administration, maintenance coordination, and financial record-keeping that represented new professional skills while generating passive income that could support additional real estate acquisitions. The property management experience provided education about real estate investment that would inform future acquisition decisions while building portfolio that could generate substantial wealth over time. The combination of professional advancement, strategic homeownership, and real estate investment created a comprehensive approach to wealth building that would establish financial independence while demonstrating capabilities that challenged family assumptions about my potential for economic success. The systematic progress towards substantial net worth reflected disciplined planning and strategic decision-making that transformed crisis-driven financial stress into foundation for long-term prosperity and security. The wealth accumulation strategy positioned me for eventual achievement of financial position that would enable major purchases including luxury items, travel experiences, and potentially property acquisitions that could demonstrate economic success to family members who had underestimated my capabilities while exploiting my generosity during fabricated financial emergencies. The foundation was being established for eventual reversal of family financial dynamics that would prove the extent of transformation achieved through strategic planning and disciplined effort. The successful completion of my second year as Housing Policy Director marked a watershed moment in both professional achievement and financial accumulation that would establish the foundation for opportunities I had never previously considered achievable. The comprehensive housing policy reforms implemented under my leadership had generated measurable improvements in affordable housing availability throughout Phoenix, while attracting national attention from policy organizations and federal agencies seeking replicable solutions to urban housing challenges. The policy innovations developed through collaborative stakeholder engagement had resulted in measurable outcomes that exceeded projections for both housing production and community acceptance. The geographic distribution requirements for affordable housing development had successfully reduced concentration effects while expanding homeownership opportunities in previously inaccessible neighborhoods. The streamlined approval processes had decreased development costs by an average of 12%, while maintaining quality standards and community compatibility requirements. The federal recognition of Phoenix housing policy innovations led to invitation for testimony before the House Subcommittee on Housing, Community Development, and Insurance regarding legislative proposals that could expand similar approaches to metropolitan areas throughout the nation. The congressional testimony opportunity represented unprecedented professional recognition, while establishing credibility for future advancement opportunities at state or federal levels that could significantly expand career trajectory possibilities. The preparation for congressional testimony required comprehensive analysis of policy implementation outcomes and detailed documentation of replication strategies that could guide other jurisdictions seeking to address similar housing affordability challenges. The research process revealed additional opportunities for policy refinement while building expertise in federal legislative processes that would prove valuable for future advocacy and funding acquisition initiatives. The testimony presentation emphasized evidence-based policy development that balanced affordability objectives with fiscal responsibility and community acceptance through authentic stakeholder engagement and systematic outcome measurement. The committee members expressed enthusiasm for the collaborative approach and requested additional information about implementation barriers and resource requirements that could inform federal policy development and funding priorities. The positive reception from congressional representatives led to follow-up consultations with Department of Housing and Urban Development staff regarding pilot program opportunities that could provide additional federal funding for expanding Phoenix housing innovations while supporting research that could inform national policy development. The federal partnership potential represented significant resource acquisition opportunity while enhancing professional credibility and policy impact beyond local boundaries. The national recognition generated by congressional testimony created opportunities for consulting contracts with major foundations and policy organizations seeking expertise in housing policy development and implementation strategies. The consulting opportunities provided substantial additional income while building professional network that included influential policymakers and research institutions with capacity to amplify local innovations through national platforms and funding mechanisms. The consulting work required careful balance with full-time responsibilities to ensure continued excellence in director position, while maximizing professional development and financial benefit from external opportunities. The strategic approach to consulting selection emphasized projects that enhanced expertise and credibility, while generating compensation that could accelerate progress toward wealth-building objectives and long-term financial independence. The increased income from consulting contracts enabled acceleration of real estate investment strategy through acquisition of additional rental properties that would diversify investment portfolio while building passive income streams that could eventually replace employment income entirely. The real estate investment approach focused on emerging neighborhoods with strong appreciation potential, while maintaining positive cash flow through careful property selection and professional management practices. The second rental property acquisition involved renovation project that demonstrated value-added investment capabilities, while generating substantial appreciation through strategic improvements and professional staging. The renovation experience provided practical education about construction management and property enhancement that would inform future investment decisions while building wealth through forced appreciation and rental income optimization. The property management responsibilities for multiple rental units required development of systematic approaches to tenant relations, maintenance coordination, and financial record-keeping that created foundation for potential real estate business expansion beyond personal investment objectives. The operational experience revealed opportunities for property management services that could generate additional income, while leveraging expertise developed through direct ownership and management experience. The combination of director position compensation, consulting income, and rental property cash flow had created total annual income that exceeded $200,000 for the first time in my career, while establishing foundation for continued growth through strategic expansion of each income source. The financial position enabled aggressive savings and investment that would compound wealth accumulation while maintaining comfortable lifestyle and continued professional development investments. The wealth accumulation progress had reached a level that enabled consideration of major purchases and lifestyle enhancements that would have seemed impossible during the period when resources were committed to supporting my parents' fabricated financial emergencies. The transformation from financial stress to abundance reflected systematic planning and disciplined execution that had created opportunities for demonstrating success to family members who had underestimated my capabilities. The professional recognition and financial achievement provided foundation for expanding impact through establishment of housing policy consulting firm that could serve multiple jurisdictions while building substantial business value and income potential. The consulting firm concept would leverage expertise developed through Phoenix policy implementation while creating scalable business model that could generate significant wealth while advancing housing affordability objectives nationally. The business development planning process required comprehensive market analysis, competitive assessment, and financial projections that demonstrated viability while identifying resource requirements and risk management strategies. The entrepreneurial venture represented natural evolution of consulting work, while creating potential for substantial business value that could enhance long-term wealth building beyond real estate investment and employment income. The consulting firm establishment required legal structure development, brand creation, marketing strategy implementation, and operational systems design that would support client service delivery while maintaining quality standards and professional credibility. The business development process provided entrepreneurial experience while creating additional income source that could scale with market demand and expertise development. The initial client acquisition focused on mid-sized metropolitan areas seeking to address housing affordability challenges through evidence-based policy development and implementation support. The marketing approach emphasized successful Phoenix outcomes while providing customized solutions that reflected local conditions and stakeholder priorities. The client relationships generated immediate revenue while building case studies that would support business expansion and market credibility. The consulting firm's success during the first year of operation exceeded financial projections while establishing regional reputation for innovative housing policy solutions and effective implementation support. The business growth required hiring additional staff members with complementary expertise while maintaining quality standards that would protect brand credibility and client satisfaction. The expansion created management responsibilities while building business value through systematic operations and client relationship development. The entrepreneurial success coincided with opportunity for advancement to assistant city manager position overseeing multiple departments, including housing, community development, economic development, and planning. The promotion opportunity represented significant career advancement with substantial compensation increase, while expanding leadership responsibilities and policy influence across broader range of municipal operations. The assistant city manager evaluation process required comprehensive assessment of leadership capabilities, strategic thinking skills, and political acumen necessary for senior executive position that would coordinate complex policy initiatives while managing relationships with elected officials and community stakeholders. The selection process included presentations to city council and interviews with department heads who would report to the position holder. The successful advancement to assistant city manager created compensation package exceeding $250,000 annually while providing comprehensive benefits and professional development support. The position establishment created foundation for future advancement to city manager or transition to private sector executive roles that could provide substantial additional compensation and wealth-building opportunities. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.